right, welcome to this week's episode of the Vets in Real Estate Podcast. I'm joined by former Army officer, now turned commercial real estate pro, Brian Perry. Stay tuned for this week's episode. All right, well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a while since you and I have had a time to chat. It's been about a year or so since we were in Boston, but thank you so much for joining us and being willing to share your story.
Absolutely. Happy to be here and help some other vets looking to get in the biz.
Yeah. I mean, so what is it you do on a day-to-day basis? On
a day-to-day basis, my area that I work in is called the DMV. If you're from Virginia, you call it that. That's DC, Northern Virginia and Maryland, kind of circling the main Washington, DC here. I do predominantly tenant representation, so businesses, healthcare and office users, and some retail clients. But usually right now I'm really focused on that user that is looking to do long-term leasing or buying as part of their business plan.
So your time in the Army, did it have anything close to do with this whatsoever?
I would say your ability to have confidence and, not get too high or too low is helpful. But other than that, I think it just takes a lot of grit, which I think a lot of veterans would have if they've done any type of training in the military.
Sure. So what did you actually do while you were in the Army?
Well, initially I was trained to be a tank crewman. Honestly, I joined just to blow things up. My dad was in the Marines, so I was like, I was a couple years, I was going to Hofstra in Long Island, and I was like, man, I'm not around the kind of people that I'm not excelling here. So my dad's like, just join just go down to the office and join one of the branches. So I did tank crewman, trained at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I was actually with the National Guard, deployed to Cuba, did military police, / infantry, perimeter security, and then OCS, officer candidate school, and deployed to Iraq a long time ago, 2008, 2009. So I've been out quite a long time.
Okay. So you got out in about 2009 or so?
Yeah, I probably stayed in till I think officially probably 2013 with IRR or something, but not really in a deploying capacity, just kind of there existing.
Okay, so did you go directly into real estate right out of your time in the Army?
I did not. I actually, after I got back from Iraq, I was like, I want a desk job. What's all this being out in the desert and walking around and open up the ports, and so I ended up got a job through networking. It was actually my girlfriend at the time knew somebody at a company called Fitch Ratings, and I wanted to get into finance. I just didn't know how to break in. I mean, it's kind of weird when you had some life experience and then you got to start in an analyst position. So I networked my way. I had like 3 to 6 interviews. It was pretty quick, 2010. So I was so happy, didn't really negotiate salary or anything. I was just like, okay, here we go. And I ended up staying there for a significant amount of time because it was New York City, and I was in the office 9 to 5.
Okay. So then how'd you make that transition into commercial real estate then?
Well, I think like many people, I was trying to get out of my 9 to 5, almost as soon as I was into it. But I did a lot of things I love. I was part of Team Red, White, and Blue. I did an Ironman. I was running marathons, dating in New York. It was a lot of fun. But ultimately I was like, okay, I got to change things up. And I ended up going back to get my master's degree, got into Boston College, 2016. So from there to 2018, I went for like marketing and general business. I thought I possibly was going to move to Boston. So I, after spending the winter in Boston, I was like, I'm not going to stay here. I really have family in Jersey, New York, and came back and tried to get a marketing position in New York and realized that my background is like military and finance, and a master's degree is great, but marketing, everybody needs to be a marketer these days. So I really wasn't seeing where I'm going to fit long term and not be completely replaceable. So the way that I found commercial real estate was a recruiting company called Lucas Group. Not that I'm plugging them or anything. They just were kind of how I got into the business. So they sent me a list of a whole bunch of jobs for vets. I'm sure some vets have gotten that before. Like, oh, here's a bunch of jobs that want to hire vets. And I kind of went down and I saw this group. It was a healthcare niche focused commercial real estate group in DC. I had dated a girl from Virginia, so I wasn't unfamiliar with the area. And I was like, you know what? It was 2020, January, or it was the end of 2019. I met the business owners, and they talked a big game about coming to DC and kind of working down here and making it part of my long-term plan. So they sold me on it. So January 2020, I moved to Virginia, and we know what happened for that initial year. So I looked up many nights at the sky of what on earth did I do coming here, but turned out to be a really good decision. And I think having a mentor there initially, guaranteeing me a weekly sit down, which I don't know if anybody's doing that now, definitely was a selling point that I have a mentor, because I wasn't going to move here unless I had someone that was going to show me the ropes.
Yeah. So I guess as you were lucky enough to have a mentor in that situation, what did that first year or two look like?
The first year, I don't know. I mean, in terms of you mean the deal struck, how we brokerage and.
Yeah, I mean, just what
okay.
what did life look like? What did those deals look like? What was the? I'm assuming you didn't walk in making millions of dollars that first year. I mean,
no, yeah. So just so I can be realistic with people, they initially they were putting me on certain deals so I could learn. You want to learn the deal process, and you also you're building a reputation. So what it did was I could ask him questions, and then I'd look smart to the client throughout that first year. And of course I was learning too, it's part of building your brand. And, people are going to know you're new, because you're still, no matter how old you are, when you're helping somebody the first time, it's not great to get on the phone and not have that great grasp of the market. So you have to say, hey, I have a mentor here. But I'm new in the business. I'm going to give you all the time that I can to do the best job I can. And then, but I am working with somebody senior. In that first year was very hard because, COVID came. So I really had to have savings. So any guy veteran that comes to me and they can't pay CoStar certain fees, I'm like, it's not the time now. You got to have, at least a year's worth of money, for that first year, depending on how you spend. But you don't want to come in being really stressed out in your first year, because for me, it was just, I had a couple clients trickle in, but I mean, I wasn't getting paid until the end of the year. And my splits at the time, probably 50%, right? If they were giving you a deal, or I brought a deal, and then 20% initially. So I had a double, and I had a stipend, small, probably not even enough to pay a, one bedroom or something for that first year. So that was my structure, which I totally accepted, because, I was not expecting immediate results. And so after that first year, each year, year 1 to year 3, I was improving and moving up, before I left that firm for, normal type of reasons. You either grow out of it, or, you're looking for your next opportunity. So that's kind of how that went.
Yeah. So, I mean, was there anything that you thought in those first couple of years, like your time in military, really kind of paid off, or was there any skills that really just transferred? I mean, you went from Guantanamo Bay to Iraq and all that. Were there any of those skills, I guess, from what you were doing in the
Well,
service?
yeah, I think anyone who's had to, I mean, initially, just the basic training elements. I mean, I was there for 5 months. It was only supposed to be like, 15, 12 weeks. And somehow I was in a hold under program. So you do learn quite a bit of perseverance and,
Mm.
and discipline and knowing there could be an end in sight. And really, I mean, you just, anytime, and then if you're an officer, I know not everybody going into commercial is an officer, but just think if you're a sergeant or NCO, you've been in charge, you understand the mission, and you try to go execute the way it is. But I will say, me doing marathons and triathlons and being involved with Team Red, White, and Blue, and doing a fellowship with them and motivating other vets, to stay social after service, stay active. I think doing all those things and just being in leadership roles, you can figure out what it takes to be successful, over time and not give up.
So, talk to me more about that staying social, I guess, with other veterans. It's a theme that kind of keeps
Mm.
coming up as we keep doing more and more interviews.
Right.
That seems to
Right.
be something that keeps coming up. Is that life is a little different from inside the military to as a civilian, and those relationships are different.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say it really had an impact when I started getting involved. I mean, it doesn't always have to be like a veteran group, but I think we lose some of our social and some of those teammate kind of things when you leave the military. So as much as you don't like, when you really look back at some of the memories, you're like, oh, well, that wasn't great. This wasn't great, but you weren't at it alone. So even for me, when I was going through my GMATs and trying to take this test to get into grad school, and I wasn't scoring, as high as I wanted to score initially. Interestingly enough, when I started with that group and being around more people, I ended up taking the test and not even really doing more studying. And my mind, I guess, was either just more relaxed or whatever, and I scored much better. So I think I really do believe in needing to not necessarily be in an office. I mean, I'm an office leasing agent, so technically, being in the office is good for me. But I think that's an important element for military to not just be, okay, I'm just going to work at home. And, and now all of a sudden I was around team leaders, squad leaders, and now, I'm just trying to figure out how to stay at home and not see people, which I think is kind of harmful, and it's not good for your business career either.
Yeah, and I can imagine your mental health kind of plays into it. I know through COVID, I mean, it was
Right.
me, my wife, and our young daughter, and it was rough. You saw nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't. I mean, I just got married this year. I don't have any kids, but I can only imagine the extra challenge of that period of time, and then having kids, and then them not being as social,
Mhm.
and then what that would do to my mental health or their mental health, and the school dynamic of being afraid to be around people and putting masks on the kids and all the things that came in that direction. So for me, I mean, I am always trying to be a part of some group, in DC or ever, so I
Sure.
can not just meet new people, but you actually have to keep going to events. A lot of I think vets are just going to like one-off event to say they went and did something, but you really, I mean, it's hard to make a relationship just going to something once. You got to have these repeat run-ins with people you want to help your career or eventually do business. And even I struggle with that sometimes because I like to be around, but sometimes I have to like focus, being a more on the extrovert side than introvert.
Sure.
meaning talk too much versus talk less. So,
No,
you know,
I can see that. Now, you were also able to take an opportunity of or take advantage of an opportunity through CCIM.
mm,
Where most of us most of us have to pay for it out of pocket, right? You kind of got a
ooh,
sweetheart deal, right?
oh my gosh, it was like the luckiest. I want to give, I thought it was Calvin Wong, but somebody had given me, this notice that CCIM was doing something. And I was like, I was like, wow, because I know the value of CCIM, and I know that it's something I was going to do no matter what anyway. And I think it was the first year of the program. I don't know. So maybe I just got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, to be selected for that and to be able to, and I mean, I got through the program in like a year. It was like, I probably sped through it. And I really, think it's something like long term. I want to do the classes. I love the classes. I like learning about different assets just so I'm knowledgeable, more rounded. And I think that's what CCIM brings. Um, and I want to see more people, go on that track, not just, but do it, for the people they'll meet and to, be seen as more professional, especially veterans
Yeah.
um, coming in.
So in the program you had, I think I'm gonna blank on what that it's called, but it basically was for veterans where you guys kind of went through as a cohort, is it? And they basically covered everything, right?
Right, right. I think it's like between 6 and 10. It could have changed, but the veteran CCIM scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
something to that extent. But I think it's getting more popular as it should, and that's just how I got a message on LinkedIn because I probably network a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody was nice enough to send me a message, and that's how I found out. Otherwise, I wouldn't know. So I always tell people about it if they reach out to go look at what the program is.
Yeah. So how was that class? I can only imagine going through that class with a bunch of military veterans as well. Like that's got to be a little interesting on that side of it, right?
Well, I mean, because only certain people from regions, I guess, were chosen.
Okay.
I didn't see them as much. I would go to the, um, so I would talk to them virtually, like, hey, tell me about that. I think there should be like an alumni um, group for after, like coming
Sure.
up, so we could all kind of share experience and kind of promote it moving forward. But it was a little bit separate. We all could choose whenever to go. So we really didn't have to do it together.
Okay.
So maybe that was more COVID reasoning. I think it's like, okay, we don't want to make people, but I went to New Orleans and somewhere else to do the classes. And it's funny, you don't want to, you really want to be focused in there, but early on in your career, you're like, oh my gosh, if you get a phone call, you're afraid to miss it. But it's definitely best if you can focus. I appreciated going through it. It was a pressure cooker.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
dumb enough to take a couple of my classes, both for my CPM and for my CCIM. I didn't learn my
right.
lesson for Vegas, but yeah, I took the classes in
Oh,
Vegas. A little bit of a distraction in Vegas on top of trying to work and everything
oh
else like
God.
that. Yeah, so I can imagine New Orleans could probably be a little bit of that, depending on what time of year. Could be a little bit of a
Right.
pressure to stay focused.
Right.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
how do you think CCIM and you're like me with an MBA and a CCIM? I mean, do you think one of those prepared you better for commercial real estate versus the other?
Well, I had different reasons for getting my MBA was a little bit of more probably ego driven of like, hey, I want to like of course I wanted to get into one of the top schools and um I mean Boston College is a great school, but I think it was a little too ego driven at the time, like, oh, I want people to see I have an MBA,
Mm-hmm.
kind of versus that. I think CCIM, I mean, I wanted it, because it shows you're dedicated to your industry. It's more focused on what I'm going to do. So an MBA was a little too I mean, I met people from around all over different countries, which I had done in the military too, but it was also, nice to be collaborating. And I was a little older when I went. So, being around, seeing how some of the younger guys are thinking, whether for better
Sure.
or worse, it was a life experience, not a cheap one, um, the MBA, but yeah, I just really value education. I'm trying to learn a language now myself. So I think even if you're not doing it, an MBA to try to figure things out, I would have a plan and want to work in the city, um, city that I got my MBA if I would go back. But CCIM is really helps you focus in on your career more.
So, did you notice kind of instantly as soon as you got your CCIM, you put those letters behind your name, business changed, or was there still a little bit of a ramp up to that, or how did that work for you?
Since I mean, I was kind of building my brand during that period, so I had a lot of LinkedIn. I think I have over 10,000, LinkedIn people, and I was doing videos. So it really, I was using it as a, proof of um, like a qualification if somebody's looking at me
Mm.
as part of I think it does help. Um, it's gotten me a couple listings, but people don't necessarily ask me about it. But when I had networking, I think I have been referred just based on CCIM because what it does, and this is what employers do too, they're gonna, I mean, everybody has to exclude or like if they're searching for 100 people and there's 10 graduates from Harvard, you know, it's just like CCIM is just like a separator um, to get chosen and trying to help yourself stand out. And then having, the tools that CCIM offers are really great. I mean, I don't even use some of the deals we get on half of them, but um, it gets you in the club to be really good at what you do. I think over time.
Yeah, that's fair. So, if you look back at kind of when you started in real estate and all that, has there been a favorite deal that you've worked on?
My favorite deal is usually the last deal that closed, and then I can forget about. Um, I would say probably my larger deal that I did with a client. It was long and painful, like coming down to an appraisal getting approved the night before, and
Mm.
I had worked on it for like a year, and it was one of those where you're like, okay, if this doesn't go, I don't know. I'm gonna need like to nap for 3 months. Um, but we ended up getting the appraisal reviewed. Um, and getting them the finance they needed for all the build outs and, multi-million-dollar deal. And that was my first like, six, big commission where it kind of gives you some breathing room.
Sure.
So that one I would say is my most memorable because that kind of made me have my kind of breakout year. Um, and I mean, I have, similar deals like that going on now. I just don't get as stressed about it.
So I said, so what takes a year inside of a deal? I mean, I think when most people come in, especially have no frame of reference, what commercial real estate comes into,
Uh,
we're used to residential where maybe it's a couple of months, but what takes a year inside of a deal to close?
so I guess I'm taking it from the time I have to go to the office, make the pitch, which was not totally common at the time for me. Um, and I had gone there. I had gotten the prospect, won the business, and then I mean the first step is you have to show like everything on the market, off the market. You got to kind of show them wherever you're looking, like, hey, they want to see that you're seeing the market and finding what they want. And even when you find something that potentially might work, you might see a few properties and no, this isn't it. And that can take months and months. And then you have their personal business interruptions. So they're not always going to be available. They have their time frame where they're ready to go. In the deal, we also had delays. We had We had to get multiple extensions. We had a bank issue with an appraiser and doing these different things. Is there enough parking? We had to do a whole civil engineering thing to make sure they could have enough parking for medical. So, but the good thing is I made a lot of good contacts on that deal, contractors, civil engineers, people I still use and trust to this day in the area to get deals done. So I think you don't think it could take that long, and you don't want your whole business riding on one deal. But, some deals, you kind of know if they're teetering. But a lot of times, early on, the memorable deals are the ones that keep you going.
Sure.
And so you can keep generating your base business, and then you have your, big ones you want to get throughout the year. That's kind of how I look at it.
Gotcha. So you got kind of those singles and doubles throughout the year, and then you hope to get a home run once a year or so to kind of put you ahead.
So I can, now I have a wife, so she wants to go to Miami sometimes, and I got to stay in shape, and I think the singles and doubles, and I developed my niche, being in healthcare, working with a lot of dental, plastic surgeons, a lot of startups, long-term leasing, which I think is a really good niche. And now I will do office expanding, but it was helpful to niche because there's people here that stick to that, they do that, and that worked for me.
Okay. So have you found really having that, because you said you started in healthcare, they hired you in healthcare. I mean, have you found just really kind of hyper focusing inside of just healthcare real estate has been kind of an advantage for you, or would you wish you'd have started broader and narrowed down to healthcare?
No, it was better I started narrower, actually, because if you start out trying to help everyone, I really think it makes you, get pulled in all different directions. So help me, because then I could do these deals. Sometimes even office users, you have to do retail or you have to adapt. And, I know everybody wants to take every big deal, but as someone who's taken deals that they shouldn't have taken, and then kind of learn from that, just because it's a big deal doesn't mean it's a good deal, doesn't mean, that's what you should be focusing on. So I learned, man, I think that was a good decision for me to niche. And now I kind of live in that niche. But I really more narrowed down to an MSA area, and then doing tenant and buyer rep. And my network, they'll refer me. It'll be a lot of healthcare. It's usually not, a small, 2-year office or something.
Yeah. And I think that's the fun thing, especially starting off, is in commercial. Your first handful of deals are the 500 square foot deal for a year, and you make all of $18 on it, right? And you spend 6 times that in gas just to show the space, and they eventually grow and get bigger. I'm assuming that was kind of your experience as well.
We kind of live in healthcare. I didn't have. I got to be honest. I probably block out a lot of that pain. And I probably don't think about it, but I have learned so much by doing as much tenant and buyer rep. Like I know what's usually going to work and what's usually not a good use of time, but I have wasted, I don't know if there's any way to fully vet. I have been taken. The one thing I will say, if they were discouraged in commercial real estate, is you will learn the market going with somebody that wants to see everything. So you might see a building you haven't seen before. I know we're all supposed to be the Bob Mackel and know every section of every corner, but I haven't, where I've had to talk myself, you know what, that was a building wasn't even showing clients, and it's actually, even though it's priced higher or it's there, that has a certain tenant that wants to go there. So it was good that building was on my radar. Yeah, knowing what's available, you can always see a positive in it, but you have to make money too. So the only way you do that is going through some tenants that that you didn't vet initially. But I'm not big on being a huge like that. You can just get away with it because even somebody that shows you money, they may decide something else.
Okay. Now you've mentioned a few times social media. Um, I think social media and commercial real estate's interesting because there's an old guard who is like, nope, I still got my Rolodex. That's all I need. And then there's this younger guard who, I mean, fully embraces social media. I'm assuming listening to you, you're more of the younger guard in that where you're truly
Right.
using social media. I mean, how is that? I guess how has that journey been?
Well, I love that. Not well. I've had an evolution in my social media because I used to say, I want to be this influencer on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and I was going to and I started doing these fancy videos, and I've gotten leads from YouTube, but now I'm hyper focused on moving over to Google. I know we're going to have some weird things with, if there's, any regulation and search and AI. But I'm hyper focused on moving away from like having to post on an Instagram or something like that to really honing SEO and YouTube and using Google. And I just put myself on voice search. So I'm sure people have gotten calls with AI and SEO, and I finally gave into it. So I can only report after December of next year, some of the things I'm doing. But I did get a call Friday from somebody looking for a law office. Somebody from Texas called me. So she's the project manager looking for an amount of space, a good amount of space in my Northern Virginia. So it was a targeted call, cold call for that person, but will it turn into something? We'll see. But I get more reach out from my target audience, whether it's healthcare or, office users. So I'm optimistic that I'm starting to do something right there. But I do you really do have to spend money, and it's a risk.
Sure.
Because my deals take a long time to close. So it's not for the faint of heart, I think, if you're, going that route versus a lot of door knocking.
Yeah, and I think that's always the fun thing in the commercial sector is, it's cold calls, it's door knocking, social media, mailers. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to do it. And I think the one thing that I've kind of picked up is that not every way is the right way and not every way is the wrong way. It really depends on who your audience is, depends on who you're trying to go after and what may work for you, and your personality may not work for me. And I think I think you were kind of alluding to it. You wanted to be this influencer, but it wasn't necessarily bringing you the business that you wanted.
I think I was so tired. I mean, I'd hired somebody to help me kind of probably, you could have done this before, but I hired somebody to do the editing. I was writing all the scripts. I was, it sounded good and it looked good and they'd send to an email list, but I was like, man, I'd rather spend and try to tune it that way and then kind of work on my profile a bit. And, it's a work in progress in that sense. But yeah, I just did not want to be, I wanted to focus on the business. And, but I will say the more you're visible, the more people can be like, okay, that's Will, that's Brian, in DC. And I think next year I'm going to try to be a little better at that, but it depends what works for you. Cause just being on camera and then assuming you're going to, like YouTube, the leads are going to be coming in, there's a lot to it. You probably have to have somebody help you, put in the keywords and all that stuff. So
well, and
I'm all for that if people do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bob Knackle. One of the quotes that he has out there that I'm a fan of his as well was that it's not how many people you know, it's how many people that know you. And the whole idea with marketing is to get more people to know who you are. I think the way he said there's something like it's New York City, right? So there's 4 billion office owners. I have no idea what the number is, right? He does because he knows his markets, but he's like, there's no way I can cold call all those people in a lifetime. They have to know who I am.
And I was a huge fan in New York, and I mean I knew Peraz before he was going there. I was like, man, that is an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
It's some Gordon Gecko, not that, not in the bad sense,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the, I don't know. I mean, I like the classic, the thrill of it, the deal making. But I mean, it's a great city. I was there 6 years, so I want to see, but I also see opportunity in DC. So both of them can get me excited. I'd be him going there. I'm excited for him to,
Yeah.
see the hustle and bustle. And hey, DC's got plenty of office space that we need to make. I'm not going to say any slogans, but there's plenty of things to do. It keeps me busy in this market, so it's good.
So what has kept you inside of commercial real estate? Like you obviously, like, you can hear your passion, you can hear you enjoy it, you hear the challenge and all that, but what's kept you inside of commercial real estate?
I know from, I guess, I don't believe in, that I've known that things aren't going to, I had expectations set in the beginning. I had some money set aside. I feel like I could, if I really wanted to, probably latch on to a normal job and go that route. But the freedom that I have now is kind of insane. Like, in terms of the way I've dialed in some of my business things. Now, I need to make better use. Like, every year is a different challenge. I think I would say that. Like, every year is a chance to be better than the year before, to grow your business, learn something new. There's always something new to learn. So that's, for me, that's what gets me. And then I'm part of a company that has incentives, stock options. So for me, if you give me a carrot, and I know where I'm going, that's a much better, much better opportunity to make your own lifestyle. Even if you're starting later, like I did, I think, you just got to stick with it and not have an ego that, you're going to make a ton of money initially.
Oh, that's fair. So if as we're kind of starting to wrap up, if you were to sit back and, talking to the Brian, getting into commercial real estate, exiting the military, is there anything that you would have said, hey, don't do this or change that or do this a different way? Is there anything you would have done differently? I mean, obviously there's the advantage of learning from all that, but is there some lessons you wish you could just tell yourself instead of learn the hard way?
If I was going in the military and I was going in for like the 3 to 5 years, however people do, first of all, I would go right into it, suffer early, and do a boutique at least for a couple of years and kind of understand the business, soak in everything you can. But yeah, if I could go back, I don't know. I really liked my time in New York, but I would have done a lot of things differently. I wouldn't have gone my MBA, and I would have. Well, my MBA helped get myself hired, so they really liked that I had the MBA.
Sure.
So I shouldn't say that, but I guess have the plan, so everything you're doing is worth your time. So if you're going to do commercial, you're like, plan 3 years of a ramp up period. Probably won't take that long to get a few deals if you have a good, a good mentor or a good broker. But I would just say you're in it. Oh, I think it was who's the SAOR? Robert.
Oh,
I remember he wrote something on Twitter, and he was like, you're not in, or Coy, you're not in, real estate for the first, 5 to 10 years. You're in it for years 11 to 30 or something like that. So I always think setting my, knowing I'm in this for the long haul makes me calm, and like I have to still be learning constantly. So that's how I feel about it.
No, that's great. And I mean, I use the same slogan, kind of similar, is that it's a 5-year sprint before you start really making money, which sounds nuts because at 5 years you start seeing clients come back, you start seeing repeats. Like, it's all that effort starting to compound once you hit 5 years, which, I mean, God, doing anything for 5 years sounds nuts.
But I mean, that's how I'm experiencing, with clients and wanting to be better. But I think it does fit very well for an officer or somebody who was an achiever, because if you go into 9 to 5, not that there's anything wrong as an analyst or something, but you might feel that, you're, you're ready to do more, and some things are more structured, just a different personality. So I know when talking with someone if they're, if it's something they might want to do. But yeah.
So, all right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for your time and willing to share your story. And from time to time, we do get questions coming out. So hopefully you'll be more than willing to jump in and answer some of those questions we do have that come from some of the viewers. But again, thank you, one, for your service, and two, for your time and willingness to kind of share your story.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.